Okay, that was fun. Here's he. Okay, everybody making it. You should be seeing me and not just a. So if you're seeing a welcome sign, that shouldn't be me. You should be seeing me personally. Okay, I think this had to catch up. My apologies. I used to use a piece of software called Ecamm. That software belonged to my former employers. So as a result, I am no longer allowed to use that. So, uh, sort of didn't discover that until about 5 minutes before before the stream was supposed to go live. So, that didn't work really well for me. And I need to. Okay, is everybody still with me? I had an issue with uh, two different screens of myself being open, so I had to get rid of one of those. I mean, who doesn't like to hear the sound of their own voice? But nobody really needs to hear my voice twice. Okay, I can see all of you. That's awesome. Oh, my goodness. All right. Technology, it's a beautiful thing when it works. We need the overlay. Perfect. Okay. Well, excellent. Thanks, guys, for hanging in there while we sorted out the nonsense. Um, I also realized that the other streaming program I had wasn't signed up to save the stream. So, comedy of errors. I'll be doing a little bit of editing later, which is something I don't normally do on the videos. Normally, I just let them go live and have at it. Um, but we're all here, or at least quite a few people are here, so might as well hop to it. For those of you that don't know, welcome to the publishing game. This is the educational division of Misty Media. I'm Jay Hartman, the editor in chief and CEO. With me here in the office, playing with a food toy at the moment to keep him quiet, is Zeke the Wonder Dog. And in the chat room with all of you is acquisition editor in charge of unpublished and debut authors, Sandra Murphy, also known as my right-hand woman. So thank you all very much for joining us today. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. One, this YouTube channel is not monetized or subsidized in any way. So would very much appreciate it if you would give this video a thumbs up if you find it useful, and subscribe to the channel for more Q&As, interviews, shorts, and seminars to come. There's a little bell icon there. If you click the bell to be notified, If you click the bell, you'll be notified when the next video arrives. We are going to be going on a much more regular upload schedule moving forward. So definitely looking forward to that. Sandy will be keeping my feet to the fire to make sure that I have always got new stuff coming up and going online. Second, in the interest of me not tripping over my tongue a million times, for the sake of ease, I'll be referring to LGBTQIA plus books as LGBT or gay and lesbian. This is by no means a slight on my fellow alphabet family members. I am an openly gay man myself. But that combo of letters doesn't quite come out right if I say it repeatedly, and I end up sounding as if I'm spitting nails. So likewise, please take no offense for usage of Black versus African American, Native American versus Indigenous, etc. There are lots of new terms entering the public lexicon all the time, and learning their usage is exactly that, a learning experience. Third, this is not a political space. There's no woke ideology. There's no left. There's no right. I present solely on fact-based information. That being said, I do very much defend the gay agenda, which allows you to collect points for converting straight people to gay. In fact, I just earned a $10 Starbucks gift card for my latest batch of conversions, and I'm saving up to get myself a new iPad. So only 10,000 more conversions to go. Lastly, if you solely publish through Amazon's Kindle platform, you may not find some of the advice later in the show useful to you, as you don't have the same control over your titles and metadata as someone who is using a worldwide distributor for your ebooks and or print. So today's topic is an extension of an article that I wrote for the June newsletter from Writers and Publishers Network. That article will be linked below in the show notes once this stream is over and I am able to go back and make edit changes. I had everything kind of already populated with the previous pre-scheduled YouTube streams, and I'm gonna have to go back and redo it. But any of the links that I discuss in today's show will be in the show notes after the stream. So the article will be linked there, and then feel free to leave a comment either here on the video or over with the newsletter with any feedback, insight, or recommendations you might have. One of the things I'm looking to do is to put together reading lists from a lot of these different communities so that folks have a reading list that's really kind of dedicated to the kinds of material they're looking for. So happy Pride Month to all those who are celebrating. Things have come a long way in celebrating the diversity of our communities and their contributions to the world of publishing. But there's a lot more that still needs to be done to get titles by marginalized and underrepresented voices visible to the reading public. In order to better understand that, we kind of need to take a look at where the industry used to be on the subject, where things are now, and what we can do in the future to help move the needle for discoverability and acceptance of diverse titles. So I'm going to take you back to 1990 when I was a student at Florida State University in Tallahassee, Florida. That was my coming out year, and I was working on a degree in literature with an emphasis on minority lit and 20th century. But in the city of Tallahassee, the only place that I could buy gay literature was in shops specifically dedicated to gay customers. Amazingly, there was a shop across the street from the Florida State University Student Union. They offer rainbow rings, rainbow stickers, rainbow mugs, and rainbow lit. So think My Little Pony meets Leather Night at the Eagle. And that's kind of the combination of that store. There wasn't anywhere near the breadth of choice that exists today, and you couldn't just walk into your local Walden Books or B. Dalton and find the material on the shelves. Likewise, there were no sections at these chain bookstores for Native American or Indigenous lit. Instead, there might be a category of minority lit that lumped a handful of those titles together, along with any Latino or Black titles. Even worse, these were usually hidden in the nonfiction social sciences section. So I distinctly remember that most Black fiction at my Walden Books, where I was a store manager, was originally all in social sciences. And the selection was, to put it mildly, pretty darn poor. The good news is that as time went on and dramatic changes happened in various cultures, either for good or for bad, the literature of these underrepresented voices became more visible. So, Black History Month in February, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Month in May, Gay Pride Month in June, and Native American Heritage Month in November. They've all helped to shine a spotlight on the contributions of writers from these cultures, and their writings are no longer segregated into subsections of social sciences. Not to mention the advances in the understanding and acceptance of the neurodiverse and physically and mentally disabled communities has given rise to the visibility of literature by and featuring characters of those cultures as well. The main problem is that once the dedicated month is over, those titles go back into their selected sections to not be pulled out and spotlit again until the next year, or until a Florida school board decides that Two Male Penguins Raising a Chick or a classic novel of slavery from the point of view of a Black woman needs to be removed from the shelves of a library because won't anybody think of the children. So where do things stand today? Well, discoverability of these titles is a little better, and much of that is thanks to the DEI, or Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee of the Independent Book Publishers Association, also known as IBPA. They've committed to helping these marginalized and underrepresented voices get presented in a clearer fashion to bookstores and to library systems. One way of doing this is to advocate for the inclusion of new diversity BISAC codes, or book industry standards and communications. These are the categorization codes that bookstores and libraries use to find and classify titles on their shelves. In recent years, the BISAC committee of IBPA has been able to convince the Book Industry Study Group to add new classifications to make titles stand out more. For example, Native American storytelling used to be lumped under a general mythology category that mixed it in with stories from Norse, Greek, and other mythologies. Now, considering that Indigenous people don't look at this as mythology in the first place, this was offensive at the least, and completely hiding the books from discovery at the worst. So as of today, there are 14 new Indigenous peoples categories for proper classification, 15 if you count the new LGBT subcategory of two-spirited / indiqueer. Hispanic Latino now has 13. African American has been changed to African American and Black and has 7 classifications. Neurodiversity, which covers basically everything on the spectrum, and disabilities also have their own categories now. So the plus side here is that libraries and bookstores have a way to better identify titles that fit into these categories when they're trying to establish collections based around them. There's still a few problems, however. For one, many key bookstores, such as Barnes & Noble and Apple, they use an abbreviated version of the BISAC codes and not the entire list. Amazon doesn't use BISAC at all. And outside the United States and a select few other places, many other countries have their own classification standards that are completely different than the BISAC. Also, many publishers and authors don't realize these new codes come out and fail to go back and reclassify their titles correctly. For example, if you have a title with a lead Mexican character that's living in East Los Angeles that you previously classified as general fiction, because there was no better classification, and it was definitely doomed to be lost in that category, you may not know that you can now reclassify that title as Hispanic, Latino, urban, and street lit. So the codes are really only effective if people actually use them. So what can you do as a publisher or author to improve the visibility of these titles? Well, there's a few options. So one, if you're publishing through Ingram, Ingram Spark, or any other distributor that allows you to establish BISAC codes for your titles, be sure you're adding only those categories that are as specific to the details of your book as possible. Throwing your title into a bunch of unfocused categories does nothing to improve its discoverability. I see this happen quite a bit at Amazon, where people will, just dump their story into every imaginable category, thinking it's going to be found no matter where they put it. But trust me, just because two people are flirty in your book doesn't make it a romance novel, and it shouldn't be classified that way. Specificity is the key to discoverability. Also, Google Books, if you haven't checked them out recently, not only do they use BISAC, but they've recently done a huge improvement to their system that has expanded to offer classifications for half a dozen or more other countries. So where we're using BISAC here, the systems that are used in France and Australia, the UK, now if you're selling an ebook through Google Books, you can actually choose at the time of setup or any time later the actual classification for that country. So to be best discovered. So you're not just relying on US methods, you're actually able to use the proper international methods to find it. So this is invaluable to having your title found in the UK, Australia, even Japan. So those really, really recommend that. Second, be upfront in your promotional efforts about what community or communities you represent when you're doing promotion. So remember that unless you've got a photo floating around somewhere, and sometimes not even then, nobody knows for sure what race or gender you are. I can tell you that in the 13 years that I ran my previous company, I wouldn't have been able to tell you the race or background of pretty much any of my authors. I had never met them in person. Most I'd never spoken to on the phone. And most I just didn't know their personal backgrounds. So if you had said to me, well, who are the Black authors in your list? I might be able to name one or two, and that would be about it. So, not having that to rely on is already one problem, but it's even more true for things that can't be deduced from a photograph, such as sexual orientation, neurodiversity, disability. Ultimately, it's not about the publisher. Nobody ever says, I want to know, I can't wait to find out what Penguin Books puts out next. They care about the readers. I mean, the readers care about the authors. And readers want to align themselves with authors and characters that look, sound, act, and experience life the same way they do. And most communities are very supportive of the authors within them. The Asian and Pacific American community is well known for recommending titles to each other and being very tight-knit in their communication. I had somebody tell me there's a phrase for that, and I can't remember now what it was, but it's something like the pineapple pipeline. I know pineapple's in the term, but it's the method for which Native Hawaiians keep everyone up to date no matter where in the world they are as to what's going on. And I thought that was pretty cool. But ultimately, being your true authentic self to your readers is one of the very best things that you can do for visibility. Third, do your research. Find bookstores that specialize in your particular type of writing and community. I hear all the time, I want to see my book on the shelf at Barnes & Noble. But give that really some thought. If you're a Black author, you'd be far better served and supported being on the shelves of Black-owned and operated bookstores. Patrons of bookshops such as Baldwin and Company in New Orleans or Blacklit Bookstore in Farmers Branch, Texas, they're catering specifically to people who want to read books by Black authors and featuring Black characters. And this isn't segregation or limiting where you're selling. It's about ensuring your book has the highest visibility possible for the best audience to receive it. You're very unlikely to receive the same amount of attention from a Barnes & Noble as you would a bookstore that's focused on your specific demographic. Fourth, contact libraries, particularly during themed months, and let them know about your title. In fact, you need to make those contacts at least 3 months before the scheduled themed month to give enough time to what can sometimes be a very lengthy process for library purchasing. It's possible the library is looking to make a collection, for example, by autistic authors to display at the front and have no idea your book exists. Or that you're autistic yourself and a local author. Yahtzee, a library loves nothing more than to support local authors. So, as mentioned previously, you can't tell by a name or a title if a book is by a Latino or Black or gay individual. This part of your life needs to be promoted just as strongly as the material itself. Lastly, consider registering with ISNI. That's ISNI. I only came to know about these folks through the work that I was doing with the diversity board of IBPA. This is a special registry that assigns an author a specific unique identifier that they can use across all their platforms and works. It essentially says it allows you to build a custom uh, biblio record of yourself and all of your works and everything about you. So uh, it works across all of your platforms or all of your works. It allows the author to give as much or as little autobiographical data on themselves as they'd like. So want to let the world know you're on the spectrum, you can. Want to say you're born in Haiti and living in St. Louis, you can do that as well. More and more bookstores and libraries are turning to ISNI as a way of discovering authors from the diverse communities. The great thing is you control what information goes in the database, if anything at all. So for the various groups and organizations discussed today, again, once this live stream is over, I will be adding the links into the show notes. And you're welcome to share these links with anyone you know that might find them useful. And of course, I hope you'll ultimately send them all to the replay of tonight's Q&A. So that's kind of the gist of what I wanted to cover for my part of the show, and I am right on time. So I'm curious about comments from all of you and input and other questions folks might have regarding publishing, regarding diversity and getting the word out. What's on your mind, folks? Ask your questions about publishing. Uh-oh, it's gone quiet. Is everybody still out there? There is nobody commenting. Did I lose everybody? Ah, hello, Charles. It got so quiet. I see there's 9 people in the room, and nobody has a question. Nobody has a comment. Tell me who your favorite diverse authors are. Who have you read that you really like? Okay, so Kay's asking, what are some examples of BISAC codes? So if you take any specific genre, let's say mystery, for example, BISAC goes ahead and what they do is they establish codes for individual subheadings of the mystery genre. So amateur sleuth, women detectives, crime noir. It's usually a combination of letters and numbers. So if you're dealing with fiction, the BISAC code will almost always start with FIC, and then there'll be a number equivalent that comes at the end of it that's specific for that subcategory. So Linda, I see you said you emailed a question. I wasn't able to check questions before I came in, so feel free to repost here if you've got one. But Kay, one of the things I'm going to be doing is I had a link in the previous show notes to the complete BISAC listings. It's free access. They have a paid version that you can pay to download, but there's really no need to. But you're absolutely welcome to use the free version that's on the web. If you go to bisg.org, you'll find a drop-down menu at the top that allows you to peruse all the BISAC codes. If you are building listings for sale through Ingram or Ingram Spark, it's going to look a little different when you access the information. They're going to ask you for your qualifiers. It's the same thing. You're just not seeing the actual BISAC number that's associated with it. They've made it a little cleaner so that you're just seeing the actual subcategories. I believe when you go to posted Google Books, if you're doing ebook posting there, it does in fact show the entire BISAC code for the individual category when you're posting your book. And amazingly, now that they do countries, other countries' coding systems, you can see what those are too. I had to run a bunch of them through Google Translate because I didn't know what certain German categories were. So now I've been able to figure out what the German romance category and the German mystery categories are. In terms of where you put the codes, it's really about when you go to sell the book. So if you're self-published and you're going to post the book, then you would be doing it as part of your book setup when you're getting the book set up for sale at the retailer. Otherwise, if you're going through a traditional publisher or a hybrid publisher or a distributor, they're going to be they should be taking care of that BISAC coding for you on your behalf. Hopefully they understand your book well enough to properly categorize it. Linda asks, do you feel like you're trying to swim up a waterfall in promoting diversity in publishing, or is the tide turning for inclusiveness? Discoverability is still the biggest problem. So if you walk into any bookstore in America and you look at the front tables, they're still filled with dead white men. Or if you look at the New York Times bestseller list, with the rare exception, it's a bunch of old white men. So it's a struggle because the bookstores are getting marketed to heavily by the Big Five. The Big Five are heavily pushing their older backlist authors who are predominantly old white men. And they're going to sell. You won't find a bookstore that says, no, I'm not going to carry Stephen King. That's just not going to happen. So getting diverse voices onto a shelf and having it stay there and not just be there as a novelty because it happens to be Black History Month or it happens to be Pride Month, and hey, we're going to rah-rah for the month and give it 30 days of attention. It's disappointing. It's very disappointing. But it's a struggle that's recognized. And so that's why there's so many people that are working to make improvements and make the system work better. We're certainly further along than we were. I mean, at least you can walk into stores now and usually find at least a small category. Even if it's not a huge category, you can find a small category of the titles that you're looking for. But it seems like there's still just this constant battle for equality on the shelves, and I don't see an end in sight to that. I don't see a permanent resolution. I can just tell you that it's getting better. It's just a very, very slow process. Jed asks, my friend has published a historic romance during the Civil War. The main character is, and I would hate to pronounce that and get that wrong, but it is definitely a tribe. Would that count as indigenous if he's living in St. Genevieve? Yeah, so there's actually a few classifications there for that would fall under BISAC. So yeah, it's a historical romance. If I'm not mistaken, there is a BISAC code for interracial romance. So if your main character is indigenous but is in love with somebody that is not indigenous in the book, then that would be a classification for it. I believe the new indigenous BISACs also have a breakout of their own for romance. So now you'd be able to identify it under there as well. So yeah, I would say you definitely can cross-classify that. But here's the thing. I would caution that if that's the only thing that makes it an indigenous title, then I would probably stay away from it. So if the character is only indigenous because that's how they made the character, but nothing that they do is cultural, we don't see their home life among other folks from their tribe, and it's just kind of like a one-note character thing, I'd be be a little reluctant to identify as that as Indigenous, because it's a little, it's kind of pushing it, sort of the same way I referred to earlier when, that flirty, two people flirting doesn't make a romance. So, yeah, that's one of those for me. Deborah Goldstein, no particular question, but how are you enjoying your new companies and how are you dividing the business lines? Well, when Sandy's not talking me off a ledge, it's been great. It really has. It has its moments of craziness and insanity. I'm used to getting a lot of stuff done in a more rapid pace. I used to make a living doing publishing. Now I'm back to having a day job, and publishing is kind of the side thing for now. But I'm loving it. So Misty Media is the overarching company. It has two sides to it. One is the publishing game, which is the educational side of things for the publishing industry. And then the other side is the imprints from Misty Media. So we have White City Press, which is everything with Misty Media takes its name from something Peruvian. My husband's from Peru, and I became very much inspired during my wilderness time between leaving Untreed Reads and with the new company. But it's so we have White City Press, which is mystery and thriller and suspense. We have a sub imprint under that's called Sandra Murphy Presents. Sandy is discovering new and unpublished authors, and she's bringing those folks out. So that's a little imprint that she has under there. We have Nazca Press, which is our science fiction and fantasy and horror imprint. We have Miraflores Nights, which is romance and erotica. We do have a nonfiction arm. A lot of these don't have titles in them yet. So you may see a few things published here, there, but all of our sub imprints don't have websites yet, just because they don't yet have titles. We have a lot in the pipeline, which is terrific. It's certainly not going to slow me down any. We have so much great stuff coming from a lot of different authors. It is definitely exciting stuff, without a doubt. So, and me not having to answer to somebody anymore and being able to make those decisions on my own. Although in many ways, because she's so bossy, I do have to answer to Sandy. But most of the time I get away with doing what I want to without her threatening me too hard. Wendy Harrison asks, how receptive are publishers to including diverse characters in short story anthology submissions? Are non-diverse writers able to include such characters without stepping on toes? So more and more, absolutely, diversity, equity, and inclusion is becoming a key point with publishers. In fact, you'll find that more often than not in submission guidelines, you're starting to see more and more phraseology that specifically says they're looking for BIPOC, so Black, Indigenous, people of color, or neurodiverse, or they're wanting to see a wider spectrum of people, because there is enough demand there that people are saying, hey, I'm not seeing characters that look like me. I'm not reading books about people like me. So short story anthologies, absolutely. It does always depend on the editor and how open the editor is to those sort of things, and to the publishing house. I mean, I think when you're doing your research, you should kind of look at, what is the track record of that publishing house in publishing other diverse authors and voices? Are they doing it because they genuinely feel that they're filling a market need, or are they doing it in a pandering sort of fashion to, well, everybody else is doing it, and if I want to make money in today's market, I have to do it too? There's definitely a lack of authenticity when that sort of thing happens. Now, are non-diverse writers able to include such characters? If you're doing your research, if you're doing your research and you're avoiding stereotypes and caricatures caricatures, you can usually pull it off. I mean, what most people don't know is that the majority of gay romance and erotica that's on the market today is written by straight women for straight women. It is not written by men, and it's not written for men. The majority of gay romance on the market today is straight women writing for other straight women. That's the market. And you can definitely tell when you read a book by a straight female author trying to write gay romance versus when an actual gay man writes it. And boy, do folks get bisexuality wrong when they're writing romances. You read that stuff and you're just kind of like, really? Like that? You clearly don't know anybody. You don't know anybody in a true life throuple relationship, and you're writing this stuff. They're not reaching the audience that it's intended because it's just not written well. It's just not. They're not getting the characters right. But it's the same thing as acting. So how many gay people have played straight characters? How many straight people have played gay characters? I mean, you can't. We've had a few people strangely play other races that really shouldn't have. Tom Cruise comes to mind in a film about ancient China, as I recall. But I mean, that's the point of it being art, is that if you're a talented author, then you can pull it off. But if you're somebody who is not familiar with the community, I would highly recommend running your story past a beta reader who is from that community to see if you're hitting all the marks the right way. I don't believe in trigger warnings. I don't believe in, and all that kind of stuff. But I do think that there's something to be said for trying to do it and getting it wrong because you didn't take the time to do your due diligence to ensure you were doing it right. Marilyn Wolf asks, don't you think many novels include diverse characters and their diversity isn't the main issue? No, I'm going to be flat out honest about that. I think too many novels include diverse characters for the sake of having a diverse character that doesn't accomplish the same character. You could change their race, you could change their sexual orientation, and it changes nothing about the character or what the character is doing. There's always how many years did we have the trope, especially in film, of the gay sidekick, right? The gay sidekick that's always the flamboyant gay best friend to the straight white girl and never has a relationship of their own, and is just there to be the comic side effect. The black guy in the horror film that is the first one to get knocked off, or is there for the comedic stuff and not for anything else. So no, I think what I find repeatedly, and especially in submissions I'm still getting now, I am finding that people are throwing diversity in for the sake of having diversity, not because it moves the plot forward, not because it's essential to the character and what the character is accomplishing. As a person with autism, the way that I deal with people socially is very, very different than the way somebody without autism deals with folks socially. So when I read a book and the person is supposedly on the spectrum and they're going to a party and and acting like there's nothing to that, sorry, I don't know of a single person with autism that's like, yeah, gee, I can't wait to go be social and be around tons of people in a loud, noisy environment. You've made that as a character component, but you haven't done anything with it. You're better off if you're not going to use it to further the plot, further your character development, make it essential to the book. Just don't bother, because then you're just tossing it in there for the sake of having it, and it rings false. And the backlash is not going to be pretty, but it will be well deserved. Linda Hardy says, also use a sensitivity reader. I have trans friends and used them to tell me where I was off base in a short story. That we got into a fight about this term um, on the short mystery fiction society list, and I, I'm not sure sensitivity reader is the right term for this. So it's no different. You wouldn't, if you're trying to figure out what ammunition a certain gun would take, you wouldn't go and say, well, I'm looking for, a, I'm looking for a gun toting specialist, right? Like, I mean, like that's not the right term for that. You'd be looking for somebody, who uh, understand an ammunitions expert, right? So sensitivity reader, I just have a problem with that because it's been used so much as most people define sensitivity reader as trigger warning. Go through my work and see what will trigger somebody to being upset. There's a big difference between that and research. Um, so I'm not. I don't like that term sensitivity reader at all. I think it's more about, I think the proper way to say it is, I'm not from that community. I'm not sure I'm getting it right. I'm going to do my research by contacting somebody in the community who can look over what I've read and see if I got it right and correct me where I went wrong. Sensitivity really has nothing to do with it. It's about research and accuracy. Um, so yeah. Kay asks where Zeke. Zeke is on the floor. He is. If I try to uh, have a conversation with people, Zeke will go crazy and try to uh, monopolize my time. He doesn't like me having conversations with other people when he's in the room. So at the moment, let's see if we can maybe get a little camera work on him. He's having a snack. So that's Zeke. He's busy playing with a peanut butter toy, and it'll keep him quiet for at least 45 minutes before he starts nagging me again. Sandy says, do you think writers don't include diverse characters because they're afraid they'll get it wrong? Absolutely. I think that's absolutely one of the reasons why they avoid it. But it shouldn't scare you off. My personal opinion is that uh, people should always be looking to stretch themselves, right? If you're, one of the things I've always loved about publishing is that, I've always said authors are kind of slutty. They'll kind of sleep with whatever publisher will publish their story. But what happens is that publishers tend to pigeonhole authors and like, oh, you're a romance author. Okay, I'll publish everything you've done that's romance. And then that same romance author wants to write a mystery and oh, I'm sorry, I don't think we want to take a chance on that mystery. And now it's the publisher afraid that, hey, you're not going to get it right because it's not what you normally write. And yet the author should feel that they have the flexibility and the power to go and do something different and try something new. And same thing with actors. Actors pick roles all the time that are way outside of the realm of what they would normally be doing because they want to stretch their creative muscles and try something different. And I don't think authors should ever be dissuaded from writing a story with diverse characters if that's what they want to write. But um, it doesn't excuse them from being accurate in how they do it. It doesn't excuse them from not writing believable characters or believable scenarios. The same rules still apply regardless if you're writing in the genre you normally like to write in or if you're attempting to stretch yourself to write in another genre. The rules of being authentic, true to your writing style, true to your voice, those things apply regardless if you're writing something you're terribly familiar with or writing something that you want to stretch on. So yeah, I mean, if you want to take a shot at writing diverse characters, you absolutely should. Great example of that is Michael Bracken. Michael Bracken is well known for all of his mystery and crime short stories. He's published somewhere between 1 and 2 million short stories, I think, at this point. What most people don't know is that Michael Bracken got to start writing gay erotica for gay magazines. And that's actually how he started out. So, and I was in line to I had actually published one of those collections in my final days um, at my other company, and he's an absolutely fantastic gay erotica author, um, and that's not something, not something anybody would associate with Michael Bracken at this point in his career, if he weren't, actually going out there and telling people that he had done it. From what I understand, he has released those 3 collections. So may not be your cup of tea, but if you want to see the evolution of an author who went from uh, writing in one completely separate genre to moving on to another completely separate genre, Michael Bracken absolutely has set the bar for what can be done, without a doubt. Who else we got going on in here? I missed any other questions? I don't think I've missed any other questions at this point. So one thing I would really like is if folks will jump into the comments uh, from this show when it posts, and also from the magazine article over on Writers Publishers Network. Tell me about your favorite authors from diverse groups. So uh, oh, My Delightful Life says I came late, missed where you put BISAC codes. That is, if you are self-publishing, you're going to be entering those at through Ingram or Ingram Spark when you go to set up your books. Some distribution companies you may be working with, and some retailers use BISAC, especially Google Books. Casey McQuiston, hello. But if you're working with a publisher, the publisher should be handling those for you. You just may want to talk to your publisher about the right way to classify your book, the way that you see classification should be. So again, definitely, please let us. Let's. Oh no, no, not on the covers, Kay. No, this is part. BISAC codes are part of metadata. So the metadata is all the background information that's uploaded to a retailer or a bookstore. Oh, Casey, God, I'm a little slow sometimes. So, but yeah, no, it doesn't go on the covers. It's metadata that gets uploaded in the background for discoverability by the bookstores. So, what happens is a library or a bookstore can do a search with that BISAC code, say for new releases in that specific subcategory, and get delivered back a list of titles that they can then go and research. Then go back and research and to build a reading list or a collection for the library. So do set your calendars. Probably roughly 2 weeks from. Not for readers then. Yeah, BISAC codes really aren't for readers. It's really more for libraries and bookstores. People more for industry professionals. You're inadvertently helping your readers by choosing BISAC codes. Because when somebody searches in a category with keywords, one of the reasons why your title comes up in a specific category is when they do that keyword search is because your title has been assigned to that category. So in your case, you have a historical mystery series with a special sub imprint of Ancient World. So of course, we're talking about. I'm having this conversation among all of you with K. George, who has the People of the Wind mystery series that takes place with Neanderthals. So, if somebody were to do a search for Neanderthal mystery, for example, at a library or a bookstore, the reason why your book would be returned as a result is because in the metadata it's been classified as a historical mystery and with a subcategory of ancient world. So it it all works together, but a reader doesn't need to know the BISAC code, but those codes need to be set up on the background to help discover the books. It's kind of the same thing if you didn't put your book, if you have a romance novel and you put it into mystery, somebody who's in the mystery category isn't going to find it because it hasn't been properly associated with the category it belongs in. So BISAC, I happen to love metadata. I love being able to classify books correctly so they're discovered. And I've gone back and reclassified books before as new BISAC codes come along. Anything that'll help, titles get discovered quicker and more accurately. So I think it's going to wrap us up for tonight, folks. Again, probably in another 2 weeks, we're going to do another live Q&A. If you do have questions you'd like to see answered in the live stream, feel free to send them to my attention. It's the letter JHARTMAN, J Hartman, at mistymedia.com. We'll have links for that in the show notes as well. Appreciate everybody being patient with today's technical issues. There's always a glitch, but we are set up for success moving forward. And I'll be posting when the replay is available on the YouTube channel, and make sure that I've got the right one up there and not the wrong one. So thank you, everybody. Have a really great night. Happy Father's Day ahead of time to anybody that is a father out there. And we will see you on the next one. And just remember that the more information you have makes you a winner in the publishing game. Have a good night.